It all started out simple enough. Just another day hanging out with Carol. School had ended last week and already we had fallen into a pattern of boredom. We were either in my room playing computer games or in hers listening to CDs. Carol and I were best friends. Our mothers were roommates in college and had remained close friends ever since. We'd known each other all our lives. We'd even been born within a month of each other. That day was just like any other. The Rolling Stones were on the stereo. Carol was lying on her bed reading a magazine, and I was sitting at her dressing table fiddling with some kind of scissor-like contraption I had never seen before. "What the hell is this?" I asked. "It's an eyelash curler, moron," said Carol. "An eyelash curler? Doesn't that hurt?" For some reason I had a picture of her eyelid being twisted inside out by this hellish-looking device. Carol gave me that exasperated sigh she uses when I've done something ignorantly male. "No, idiot. Here, I'll show you." She rolled off the bed and took the 2 steps over to the table where I sat. She took the curler from my hand and said, "Look up at me. Now, don't move." "I don't want to poke you in the eye," she cautioned as I turned my face up to her. I felt a slight tug on my left eyelid for about 5 seconds, then she moved to the right eye. After another 5 seconds she said, "Okay. Take a look." I turned to the mirror and looked at my eyelashes now sweeping up in a delicate curve. I could even feel them tickling my brow. "You know, you have really pretty eyes for a guy." "Let's have some fun," Carol said. She opened one of the drawers on her vanity and started rummaging through her makeup. "What are you doing?" I asked. She had an impish smile on her face that usually meant that things were about to get a little out of hand. I'd seen that look before. "I just want to see how pretty your eyes would look with a little makeup," she said while opening an eyeshadow compact. "You're kidding, right?" "No. Now hold still and close your eyes." I flinched a little when I felt the soft brush touch my eyelid. She alternated back and forth between my eyes as she blended the colors. "I'm using some different shades of brown so that the green in your eyes will really stand out," she said. "Now, I'm going to be adding some eyeliner, so don't move." I held my head perfectly still as I felt the tiny brush drawn across my eyelids. When she was through, I opened my eyes and started to turn towards the mirror. Not yet," she said as she turned my face back to hers. "No peeking until we're through. We've still got to do your mascara." I started to wonder why I was letting her do this. I was a guy, for crying out loud. Why didn't I tell her to stop? Oh, well. It's just the way I am with Carol. She leads and I follow. Carol had been brushing the mascara into my eyelids while these thoughts were drifting through my mind. She stopped and stepped back, looking at me appraisingly. Something's missing," she said to herself. That smile came back on her face and she reached for her drawer again. "Can I look, yet?" I asked. "Not yet. The trouble is we can't just do your eyes. We need to do your whole face to get the full effect," Carol said. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "Why, to see how you'd look as a girl, silly," she answered. There it was. The point where Carol went off the deep end and I usually got dragged over the edge with her. All I could do was hang on and hope for the best. Let me get this straight. First, you just wanted to see how my eyes would look with a little makeup. Now, you want to see how I'd look as a girl. What, do you want me to put a dress on too? She just looked at me with that grin on her face and I knew I was a goner. Carol, you've really lost it this time. I'm a 17-year-old guy. There's no way you'll make me look like a girl. I reasoned. I'll bet you'll look better than you could ever believe. Don't be such a stick in the mud. Besides, it's just this once. Humor me, she said. Every time you say that I get in trouble. I said. She knew she had me. I was also getting a little curious myself. Now, sit down and let me finish your makeup. She then put a thin coat of foundation on me, followed by some blush. Then she picked up a tube of lipstick and started to coat my lips. Well, now that we've got your makeup done, we need to do something with your hair, she said. My hair was almost shoulder length. I'd gotten my last haircut in January and now it was June. It was a deal I had with my parents. I keep my hair short for the first part of school and through the holidays, and then I can do whatever I want until school starts the next fall. So, this year I had just decided to let it grow. I usually kept it pulled back in a ponytail as it was now. Carol pulled the rubber band from my hair and started brushing it out. It's long enough for some curls, but I think you'd look cute with bangs, she said. Hey! You're not going to cut my hair, are you? Don't you think that's going a little overboard? I asked. Don't worry. No one will be able to tell when you pull your hair back again. I was still a little nervous when she combed some of my hair down in front of my face and clipped it off. Then she was putting some hot rollers in my hair. I wondered when she had turned them on and realized she'd known I'd let her do this from the minute I let her put eyeshadow on me. Okay. While we let your hair set, let's do something about those clothes. Now I was really getting nervous. It's one thing to play around with makeup. It's something completely different to wear girls' clothes. I had this picture in my head of all the guys I knew calling me queer. But, at the same time, I wasn't telling her no. Don't just sit there. Get undressed, Carol said, and started rummaging through her drawers. I took my shoes and socks off, unbuttoned my shirt and slipped it off, then dropped my pants. I was standing there in my boxers when Carol turned around and started to giggle. Those will never do, she said as she handed me a pair of panties. Put these on. While her back was turned, I stepped out of my boxers and into the panties. They were white nylon briefs that forced me to tuck my penis back to keep from spilling out all over the place. I was amazed at how good they felt. Carol turned around and looked at me. They look good on you, she smiled. Hold your arms up. With that, she slipped a white lace bra on me and hooked it in the back. Then she took some foam rubber breast forms and slid them into the cups. Every girl I know has a set of these lying around somewhere, she said. I'm not really sure what I was thinking at this point. I remembered the feelings of the strange clothes, the odd constriction of the bra and the silky softness of the panties. Carol then handed me a pair of pantyhose and explained how to roll them up and then slide them up my legs. The hose seemed to make what little hair I had disappear. It was a little disconcerting that, with the hose on, there was no sign of my maleness. Then Carol handed me a white nylon slip and helped me get it over the rollers in my hair. I had never felt anything like that against my skin before. Carol looked at my face and grinned. I think you're starting to enjoy this, she said. I could feel my face turning red and stammered, I guess so. Boy, what did that say about me? Was I really enjoying this or was it simply sensory overload? I watched as she pulled a dress from her closet. It was a simple plaid, cotton dress with a scooped neckline and a flared skirt. I remembered seeing Carol wear it to school. She helped pull it over my head and zipped it up the back. I was kind of amazed it fit. I guess Carol and I are the same size. That had never occurred to me before. Then she gave me some wedge-heeled pumps and I slipped them on my feet. I guess my feet are bigger than Carol's because the shoes were a little tight. Not uncomfortably so, though. Carol then led me back to her vanity and started taking the rollers out of my hair. After a little brushing and some hairspray, she clipped some small gold earrings on my ears and a gold chain around my neck. "Well, are you ready for the unveiling?" she asked. I then realized that I hadn't seen myself in the mirror at all and had no idea how I looked. Carol took me by the hand and led me to stand in front of her full-length mirror. I couldn't believe what I saw. There, staring back at me with a dumbfounded look on her face, was a teenage girl. Her beautiful green eyes stared out from her prettily made-up face. Her face was surrounded by soft curls and her bangs seemed to caress her forehead. Her dress gave a teasing hint of adolescent breasts, hugged her waist, and flared out over her hips ending several inches above her knees. Her hose gave her legs a soft sheen. I started to turn and froze when the girl in the mirror turned too. That was me. I was the girl in the mirror. How was this possible? I was a guy. The image in the mirror didn't agree with the image in my head. All I could do was stare. Then I noticed that the girl in the mirror was beaming at me with the most radiant smile I had ever seen. "I take it that you're pleased with what you see," Carol said. I can't believe it," I stammered. "Is that really me?" Smiling, Carol said, "I told you wouldn't believe it." "Who's this pretty thing?" the voice said from the doorway. I whirled around to see my mother standing there in the doorway. I froze. My heart leapt to my throat and put a stranglehold on my voice. She slowly walked into the room. I could feel her eyes scrutinizing me from head to toe. Her face was blank. No expression at all. What could I do? What could I say? My mind had turned to mush. I just stood there, frozen, while she walked around me. She stopped in front of me and looked at my face. I saw the corners of her mouth twitch and the sparkle come to her eyes as she tried to hide the smile trying to break out. "Well, you've had a busy day," she said, grinning. I suddenly found my voice. We were just kidding around and Carol wanted to see how I'd look with some of my makeup and then she had to do my hair because you can't tell with just makeup and then she had me put on her dress and I was gushing when she cut me off. "Whoa, slow down. Take a deep breath and tell me from the beginning," she said. Carol did all the talking because I had lost my voice again. She explained how it was her idea to see how I'd look as a girl. It didn't mean anything. It was just a harmless experiment. Mom turned to me and said, "You make a very lovely girl." The smile on her face let me know that everything was okay. "Can you believe it, Mom? I actually look like a girl." "Tell me," she said, "how do you feel about wearing lingerie and a dress?" "Well, I've only had it on for a short time, but I actually kind of like it." "Does that make me some kind of weirdo?" "Nonsense," she said. "Being able to enjoy a new experience makes you a pretty healthy person." "I'm just so stunned," I said. I really had no idea I could look like this. Not to mention all the new sensations from the clothes. I know they're just clothes, but they're so different from anything I've ever worn before. Mom said, women's clothing is designed not only to look feminine but to feel feminine also. I certainly feel different. Well, I hate to break this up, but it's time for us to go, she said. For some reason, I was really disappointed. I guess I just didn't want it to end. Okay, I said dejectedly, I'll get changed. Why? Mom said. I said we had to leave, I didn't say you had to change. I can't leave looking like this. What if somebody sees me? Then they'll see a pretty teenage girl, not a boy. If I didn't know you were my son, I'd swear you were one of Carol's friends from school, Mom said. Don't worry. No one will be able to tell while you're in the car. The next thing I knew, Carol had handed me my clothes and I was walking out the front door. I jumped in the car and slouched down in the seat. Sit up straight and smooth your skirt under you or it will wrinkle, Mom said. And stop worrying. If you act like nothing's wrong, no one else will. So, I smoothed my skirt under me and sat with my knees together. Not because it was ladylike, but I was just plain nervous. I pulled down the sun visor, hoping it would help hide me. My fingers brushed over the vanity mirror and I just couldn't resist. I had to get another look. I still couldn't believe the girl in the mirror was me. The only thing people will see is exactly what you see in that mirror, a pretty girl, Mom said. As she drove, I started to relax a little. No one was paying any attention to me at all. I was fine until we turned into our driveway and parked behind my father's car. I must have gone deathly pale because Mom was asking me what was wrong. Dad! I gasped. I can't let him see me like this. He'll think I'm some kind of pervert. What the hell was I gonna do? Calm down. You're going to have a stroke. You let me worry about your dad. I want you to go straight to the kitchen and wait there for me. Dad will be in the den checking his email so he won't see you. Besides, I don't think you're giving your father enough credit. All I wanted to do was run to my room and change, but to do that I'd have to pass through the den. Instead, I hurried to the kitchen and hoped my mom could distract my dad long enough for me to get to safety. After an eternity, Mom came into the kitchen. Your dad wants to see you. What? Are you crazy? I thought I was going to faint. Take it easy. I explained everything to your father and he's not upset. He just wants to see you. He's not mad at me? I couldn't believe this. I think your father is a lot more understanding than you know. Come on now, let's go on in. She took my hand and led me down the short hallway to the den. I was so scared and embarrassed that I couldn't look at my father. Wow. What did he just say? I looked up to see my father smiling at me. You look terrific. I had no idea. Your mom said you looked nice, but wow. I just couldn't comprehend what he was saying, so I began to apologize. I'm sorry, Dad. It was one of Carol's crazy ideas. I'm not a queer. A little steel crept into my father's voice. That term, and others like it, is as unwelcome in this house as the N-word. I don't want to ever hear that from you again. His voice softened immediately. Now, come over here and let me get a good look at you. Somehow, my legs carried me over to stand in front of my father. You really do look amazing. I looked into my father's face and saw what I least expected, understanding. He really wasn't mad. He looked as befuddled as I did when I looked in the mirror for the first time. He kept staring at me as if I were a long-lost relative or something. I didn't know what to say. Hell, I couldn't say anything. Boy, When Carol does something, she goes all the way, doesn't she? It struck me then that I wasn't in trouble. You're really not mad at me? Mad? Why would I be mad? Because I look like a girl. And what's wrong with that, I might ask, said my mother. My father started chuckling. I think you've just insulted your mother. I felt the tension flowing out of my body, but it was being replaced with confusion. I don't understand. Why isn't either of you upset? My dad looked at my mom with some confusion of his own. Why should we be upset? You dressed up like a girl. What's the big deal? Did you hurt anyone? No. Are you hurting yourself? No. So, what's there to be upset about? I guess I just didn't want you to think I was less of a man or gay or something. Now my dad took me by the shoulders. Being gay doesn't make you or anyone else less of a person. I don't like to hear you say that, and I certainly hope you don't believe that. As for wearing a dress, I did it too. If he hadn't been holding my arms, I think I would have fallen over. I almost did when he walked over to the bookshelf and took down an old photo album. Come over here and let me show you something. I walked over and sat next to him on the couch, remembering to smooth my skirt under me as I sat. He opened the album and flipped through the pages to some old photos that I had never seen before. Take a look at this picture and tell me what you see. I looked at the photo of two women and immediately recognized my mother. This must have been taken back during her collage days, because they were both in 60s miniskirts and go-go boots. Then I realized that the other women bore a striking resemblance to my father. It could have been his sister. Only, he didn't have a sister. That's right. I'm the one standing next to your mother. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. That was my dad. In the photo, he looked as pretty and feminine as my mother. I asked if this was some kind of Halloween get-up or something. Well, he answered, the first time I did it was for Halloween. The first time? You mean you did it more than once? My dad looked at my mom and I saw her give him a nod. I'll explain everything, but you have to promise to let me finish my story before you say anything. Deal? I was more confused than ever, but I said, sure. It was our junior year in college. Your mother and I were already engaged but had no plans to marry until we had both finished school and had jobs. Back then, even though it was the late 60s, there wasn't as much partying on college campuses as there is now. The first really big blowout was the Halloween party thrown by the Greek houses. Neither your mom nor I belonged to a house, but we had both been invited to the party. Of course, it was a costume party. Now, funds were pretty tight for both of us, so renting costumes or having something made was just out of the question. We spent a lot of time discussing and rejecting ideas. One day, your mom came up with the idea of dressing me up as a girl. I laughed it off, told her she was crazy, and completely forgot about it. For the next few days, though, I'd sometimes catch her looking at me in this strange way. 3 days before the party, I had settled for just going in a toga like everyone else who didn't have money for a costume. Hey! Who needed money? Just wrap a sheet around you and voila, instant toga. That night your mom shows up at my apartment with a suitcase. I thought she was leaving school or something. When I finally calmed down and was assured she wasn't in any kind of trouble, she dropped her little bombshell. We were both going to the party as go-go girls. I told her she was crazy, again, and that I wouldn't do anything to humiliate myself. She asked if I'd be willing to give it a try and that if I didn't like the way I looked, I didn't have to do it. To humor her, I said I'd give it a try, but I didn't want her mad at me when it didn't work. The next thing I knew, I was standing there in a miniskirt and go-go boots. When I looked in the mirror, I was astounded. I really couldn't believe how feminine I looked. About that time, my roommate walked in. He said hi to your mom and asked where I was. Then he came over and introduced himself to me. He had no idea. Well, to make a long story short, we went to the party dressed to the nines in our miniskirts, tight sweaters, and go-go boots. I even shaved my legs for the occasion. The weird thing was, nobody knew I was a guy. Everyone thought I was a girl. So, that night I got to see how the other half lives. Your mom told everyone I was a friend of hers from back home. When they asked where I was, she told them I had come down with the flu. I spent that evening in a kind of shock. I was treated just like any of the other girls there. The guys were falling all over themselves to get our attention. I had doors opened for me, my chair pulled out, and I never had to refill my drink the entire evening. The girls treated me like I was one of their own. I had to talk about fashion and women's rights and even got asked if I had a boyfriend. Well, it really was an eye-opening evening for me. I had to admit to your mom that I had a great time. Then I stuck my foot in my mouth and said something stupid. I said, women had it easy. Your mom hit the roof. She let me have it with both barrels. How could I make any kind of judgment on women after only one night in their shoes? How dare I think that one stupid party could give me any insight on what it was like to be a woman? And she was right. I really didn't know anything about women. That little tirade got me to thinking. What was it like to be a woman? Not just dressing as a woman, but living as a woman. I thought about it for a long time before I mentioned anything to your mom. I couldn't stop thinking about it. A few weeks after the holidays, I told your mother about an idea I had. I wanted her to help me live as a woman over the summer. I knew I could get a hell of a sociology paper out of the experiment, but, in reality, it was just to satisfy my own curiosity. I was perfectly honest with her. I told her that my experience at the Halloween party had me determined to find out what it was like to be a woman. She thought about for a few days, then agreed. She thought it would be a lesson I'd never forget and would enrich our married life. We started making plans and I started practicing. We only had a couple of months to get ready. If we were going to pull this off, no one could know I wasn't a woman. Every free minute we had, she was teaching me something about being a woman. How to stand, how to sit, walk, talk, eat, dress, you name it. I let my hair grow even longer. I started dieting. Before I knew it, I was going out as a girl on the weekends. We'd go to dinner or a movie or shopping. Fake IDs were easy to get back then, and I had one that was female. As much as I learned in those few months, it was nothing compared to what I was about to learn. When the semester ended, I moved in with your mom. She told her roommate that a friend was coming up to work over the summer and wanted to share the apartment. So, I moved into her bedroom. Now your mom and I weren't celibates, but we agreed that for this to work, I needed to live completely as a woman. So, we would just be roommates and nothing more. I put all my male stuff in storage and started my life as Shelly. I got a job in a bookstore where everyone only knew me as Shelly. I had to wear a dress or a skirt and hose every day to work. Even if I wanted to quit, I couldn't. I had given the key to the storage locker to your mom and she had hidden it away. To become male again, I would have to go shopping as a female and then buy men's clothes and find somewhere to change. Your mom wouldn't let me back into the apartment as a male. But I didn't want to quit. I was really having the time of my life. I felt like I was learning how to live in a completely different culture. In a way, I was. Life is very different for a woman. There's the struggle to be strong and independent when the whole of society is telling you to be exactly the opposite. Be pretty. Be nice. Be submissive. Get married. Have babies. Don't be too smart, men don't like smart women. The list goes on, and it was worse back then. But there are some advantages too. Women are freer to express their emotions than men. Friendships are made on a much deeper level. In fact, most relationships women have are more intimate, more intense. I have never regretted those few months I lived as a woman and, in fact, cherish them. It literally changed my life. I sat there stunned. I didn't know what to say. My dad had lived as a woman for a time. Honey, my mom said, I know this is a little shocking, but believe me when I say that living as a woman made your father the finest man I've ever known. He has an insight that most men don't. Because of those few months, our marriage has been unbelievable. There isn't a day that goes by that your father doesn't show me how much he loves and respects me. We have a true partnership. I couldn't ever consider life without him. He's my knight in shining armor and best friend all rolled into one. I sat there for a few minutes trying to consider everything I'd just heard. It suddenly occurred to me that I was sitting there in a dress. I had completely forgotten my own situation. What I did know was that no matter how I was dressed or how I looked, I was loved. I leaned over and hugged my dad. Carol was starting to get a little worried. It had been 2 hours since Russ and his mom had left, and she knew she had gotten him into a fix again. It's not like it was her fault, really. She hadn't forced him to do anything. If he weren't so wishy-washy, she'd have never gotten him into that dress. Who was she kidding? She'd conned him again. Russ was just a decent guy who had one tiny character flaw. He trusted her. Damn it! She didn't mean to always get him in trouble, it just happened. On the bright side, she didn't think his mom was upset. Moms could be tricky though. They could be all smiles on the outside and seething volcanoes on the inside. The worst part was not knowing how much trouble she was in. When the defecation came into contact with the rotary oscillator, she was going to be covered from head to toe. God! Why didn't he call? Maybe she should call him? Nope, bad idea. Why remind everyone who the instigator was? Russ was looking in the mirror again. It was all so bizarre. How was it possible that he could look that much like a girl? Why didn't he take the dress off and change into his normal clothes? Did he actually like looking like a girl? Well, to be perfectly honest, yeah, he did. He wasn't sure he wanted to admit that to himself yet. The whole situation was like an episode of The Twilight Zone. Carol talking him into this and then finding out his dad had spent an entire summer living as a woman. That little fact was still making his brain spin. Dad had lived as a woman. There was no one on the planet he respected more. Other guys bitched about their dads constantly. His father had always been supportive. Even when he was being punished, he knew his father was doing it out of love. When he was a kid, his father would play baseball with him and the other kids from the block. When he wanted to play basketball in junior high, his father was at every game. When he wanted to join the choir in high school, his father was at every concert. When he got a part in the school play, his father was there on opening night, always encouraging him to follow his passion and do the best he could. That's why he got so scared at the prospect of having his dad see him dressed this way. He thought he'd be letting him down. But just as always, his dad had come through for him again. "I'm still having a little trouble remembering you're my son," my mother said from the doorway. "You just look so pretty." I wasn't sure to blush or smile. I'm having a hard time with it myself. Part of me is saying I shouldn't be doing this. Normal guys don't dress up as girls. But there's another part that says it's no big deal. Mom came, stood behind me, put her arms around my waist and rested her chin on my shoulder. "Look in that mirror and tell me what is not normal." All I see is a mother loving her child. How can that be wrong? We stood there a few more minutes until I finally began to smile. "I look like you." I'd always known I looked more like my mom than my dad, but now the resemblance was uncanny. I looked like a teenage version of my mother. Maybe that's why I feel so pretty. Flattery will get you everywhere, my dear. Mom turned me around and took hold of my hands. "I do want to ask you some questions though. Are you okay with what your father told you? We weren't trying to hide it from you, we just never thought it would be necessary to tell you." I've gotta admit, Mom, it still has me a little shaken. Well, this whole experience has me a little shaken. She held my hand as she led me over to the bed and we sat on the edge. "Well, which has got you freaked the most, your father's story or the way you look?" "Both." I didn't quite know what to say. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do. Shouldn't I be mad at Carol for getting me into another mess? But, what mess? Nobody's upset. You and Dad aren't even all that surprised. Mom squeezed my hands. "Honey, what you are forgetting is that we've been through this before. What Dad didn't tell you is that he was very confused and had a hard time adjusting. We even talked about this situation before we got married. We talked about how we'd treat our children if one of them ever showed signs of being gay or transgender. Before you say anything, I know this was just a silly experiment. But even if it's not, the bottom line is that we will always love you and support you. Now," she said as she hugged me, "tell me how you honestly feel about looking like a girl. Do you like how you look?" I decided that she deserved the truth, just like I had gotten from her and Dad. "Yeah, Mom. I do. I mean, it's hard for me to accept. But, I do like the way I look. I like the way the clothes make me feel. Is there something wrong with me?" "Oh, honey, no. There's nothing wrong with you. Everyone questions his or her identity from time to time. Even their gender, sometimes. Especially at your age. Just consider it a part of growing up. Does this mean I'm gay?" Mom laughed as if I'd just delivered the punchline of her favorite joke. "Oh, sweetie, if you weren't gay this morning, I doubt very seriously that wearing a dress for a few hours will make you gay. But, isn't it wrong for me to like this? Guys aren't supposed to be pretty. And, they're definitely not supposed to like being dressed as a girl," I whined. "I thought you were smarter than that," Mom admonished. "Is there a rule book for being a guy? When was the edict passed that forbade guys from doing anything remotely feminine? Are you going to let some unknown they live your life for you, or do you have the courage to do a little self-discovery?" She stood and turned to me. Life has enough misery without letting someone else inject their narrow set of rules. Part of the joy in life is experiencing different ideas and situations, then taking what you've learned and creating a more fulfilling life for yourself. That was the lesson your father and I both learned over that summer. Did Dad like living as a woman? I asked. Yes, I did. I hadn't realized he was standing in the doorway. I liked everything about it except plucking my eyebrows. Hurts like hell. I still have nightmares. That got me to smile. Son, what we're trying to tell you is don't be afraid of your feelings. And don't let anyone else tell you how you're supposed to feel. Everything they said made sense. It wasn't anything they hadn't been trying to teach me all of my life. I'd just never imagined this particular scenario. Then I had a small aneurysm and blurted out, "Can I do this again?" Mom just looked at Dad with that knowing little smile she has. Tell you what. Why don't you call Carol and see if she has another outfit or two you can borrow and you can try being a girl for a couple of days. See how you like it. Do you mean it? Of course. Besides, Carol's probably going nuts wondering what happened to you. I can't take this. I'm gonna have a stroke. Carol kept the dialogue running in her head. He should have called by now. Maybe his parents are so mad they won't let him call me. A bad influence. That's what they'll call me. A bad, wicked, deceitful bitch of an influence. I've ruined everything. Her phone rang the moment her hand touched the receiver. Jerking her hand away, she let out a startled gasp. Glancing at the caller ID really didn't make her feel any easier. It was Russ. She tentatively picked up the phone. Hello? Hey, Carol, it's me. Okay. How much trouble are we in? Will I ever see the inside of a mall again? I pulled the handset away from my ear for a moment. What the hell are talking about? I asked. Carol has been known to be a bit of a drama queen. What am I talking about? I'm talking about solitary confinement until I'm old and gray. I'm talking about no phone, no TV, and no computer. I'm talking about being grounded. I'm talking about being forbidden to ever see you again. That's what I'm talking about. I was confused. When did all this happen? Quit playing with me, okay? I could hear the stress in her voice. I've been sitting here waiting for the axe to fall. Just tell me how bad things are and what the hell you're laughing at. It took a moment for me to regain control. Sorry, I said between laughs. You know, you really deserve all that punishment for getting me into another mess. But I'm gonna let you off the hook. Nobody's in trouble. Not me or you. You mean it? Relief flooded through Carol's voice. Your mom really wasn't upset? I thought maybe that was just an act. Nope. She was pretty cool about the whole thing. So was my dad when he saw me. I thought I was gonna have a coronary though. Your dad saw you and he didn't freak? I could hear her disbelief. At first, I thought he would lose it and go postal or something, but he never batted an eye. He even told me I was a pretty cute girl. I didn't think I should tell her about Dad's story. That was probably something best kept in the family. I can't believe it. I don't know what to say. Now there was a first. Actually, I said, they're going to let me stay this way for a while. Wait a minute. What are you saying? Carol was really confused. They're going to let me be a girl for a few days. Just to see what it's like. That is, if I can borrow a couple of more outfits from you. I could almost hear her jaw hit the floor. Or maybe it was her brain exploding? Hold it! Hold it! I can't get my head around this. Let's go back to the beginning. Are you telling me you like wearing a dress? I started laughing again. Yep. And you like it so much you want to see what it's like to be a girl for a few days. Yep. And you want me to help you. Of course, I said. What do I know about being a girl? And your parents are okay with this? Totally okay. They're even calling me Rachel. That was the name they had picked out if I had been born a girl. Okay. Just give me a minute to think this through. I swear I could hear the gears turning in her head. This is so cool. It'll be like playing dress up again. She was starting to get revved up about it. Wait till I tell the girls. They'll freak. Hey! You can't tell anyone. I interrupted. Why not? If anyone finds out about this, it'll ruin the whole experiment. Sorry, I'm not following you. Look, if I want to find out what it's like as a girl, then I have to be treated as a real girl. Not a guy in a dress. Besides, it's not like anyone else is going to see me anyway. I didn't mention that life, as I knew it, would be over for me if anyone found out. Teenagers are the most ruthlessly cruel people on the planet. Lepers have more social life than someone who runs afoul of the crowd. The barrage of insults and jeers would continue for years. I wasn't about to risk that. I hoped Carol would get the message. Okay. I get you now. So, this little experiment of yours, how long's it supposed to last? Just a couple of days, I guess. Really, I guess it depends on how I feel about everything and how my parents feel, of course. So, we'll need outfits for, let's say 3 days, and of course all the accessories to go with them, she said. Oh. I think we've got a problem. What? My mom. How am I supposed to get you everything you need without her finding out? There's no way I can lie to her. You know that. Carol's mom had the uncanny ability to know when Carol was lying. Every single time. Carol had never gotten away with so much as a half-truth. Never. It was really kind of spooky. So, where her mom was concerned, Carol lived by the rule that honesty is the best policy. She didn't have a choice. But I had an ace in the hole Carol didn't know about. Carol's mom had been my mother's roommate in college. She knew about Dad's experiment and had never said a word. I was hoping for the same level of discretion. Okay. Tell your mom if you have to, but, for God's sake, don't tell anyone else. I swear I won't tell another soul, Carol said. I got serious. Hey, you don't think I'm weird or anything, do you? Carol was very emphatic. Hell yes. But then you've always been an enchilada short of a full Mexican plate. I think my silence told her I wasn't kidding. Look, I was just joking, she said. Yeah, I think it's kinda weird that you like wearing a dress. But at the same time, it's cool that you're doing this so you can learn a little bit about the other half. Besides, I can't wait to pay you back for all those times you snapped my bra. That got me laughing again. It is pretty freaky, isn't it? I said. The conversation after that was actually pretty mundane. If you consider that we were making plans for my transformation mundane. Carol would come to my house in the morning with a few more outfits and we'd just kind of wing it from there. Of course, everything depended on how her mom would react. I had finished with Carol and was sitting there on my bed trying to figure out when I had lost my mind, and my mom came through the door. "So, is Carol going to help?" she asked. "Yeah, she's bringing some more stuff over in the morning." "Excellent," she said. "Here, I brought you something you might want to sleep in." She handed me a pair of yellow pajamas made of satin. Just shorts with an elastic waist and a pullover top. There was lace around the neckline and the sleeves. "You'll want to leave on your panties and maybe your bra, but that's up to you. You may not be too comfortable trying to sleep in a bra. I also brought you some makeup remover and some cotton pads. It's not smart to sleep in your makeup." I had forgotten I was even wearing makeup. "It'll ruin your skin and your pillowcase. Just follow the directions on the bottle." It was then that I uttered the first line in what was to be a whole new vocabulary for me. "Mom? Would you unzip me?" Giggling, she said, "I guess you haven't had much practice getting in and out of a dress." With that, she turned me around and unzipped my dress. "Be sure you hang this up. You've only worn it for a few hours and it's still clean." So, I stepped out of the dress, then hung it in my closet. It looked very out of place with all my jeans and shirts. When I walked into my bathroom, still wearing my slip and other lingerie, I got another shock. Looking at myself in the mirror was like seeing some strange girl in her underwear. I felt like a peeping Tom. Standing there, I saw just how feminine my body looked. Why had I never noticed this before? I figured it was the packaging. I had never worn anything remotely girly before. Now, here I was in all this satin and lace with curves where there had never been curves before. I figured once I stripped I'd see my old self again. But, wasn't that the whole point? I didn't want to see my old self. I liked this new me. And I was going to get to be her for a few more days. After removing my makeup, I washed my face and took off the slip and pantyhose. I decided to leave the bra on, thinking that if it got too uncomfortable I could take it off later. I put on the yellow pajamas Mom had brought me and slipped into bed. I was delighted with the way they slid across the sheets. I lay there for a while wondering what the next few days would be like. I fell asleep with a feeling of quiet anticipation. I woke the next morning as if a switch had been turned on. 1 second I was sound asleep, the next I was wide awake. No grogginess or sluggishness. Just click, ready to go. I remember thinking that, gee, the bra hadn't been uncomfortable at all. I headed to the bathroom and took my first completely voluntary step toward my impending girlhood. I sat to pee. I stood in front of the mirror and realized I hadn't gotten all of my makeup off the night before. I had these little black specks in the corner of my eyes and dark rings under my eyes. I washed my face and started brushing my hair. I was a little disappointed that most of the curl had fallen out. I did, however, brush my bangs back down and put my hair in a ponytail, this time much higher on my head. I came back in my room and found that my mom had left a matching yellow satin robe across the foot of my bed. I put on the robe and headed to the kitchen where I could hear Mom making breakfast. "Good morning, Rachel." "Sleep okay?" she said. I was a little taken aback at her calling me Rachel. "I slept great, Mom." She came and wrapped her arms around me and said, "I like your hair this way. It's cute. There are some things I'm just going to have to get used to. Being cute is one of them." You shouldn't use a rubber band though, it'll damage your hair. I just smiled at her. I think she was going to enjoy having a daughter for the next few days. It's all I had, I said. Well, I've got all kinds of barrettes and such that you can use. So, you and Dad are still okay with all of this? I asked. We haven't changed our minds. And I take it you haven't either based on how you're dressed. She gave me a little smile half hidden behind her coffee cup. Now sit down and eat. You've got a big day ahead. I wasn't exactly sure what she meant by that. I figured it couldn't be anywhere near as stressful as yesterday. You've got a lot to do before Carol gets here. I just looked at her dumbfounded. She continued, you've got to bathe and wash and dry your hair. You've also got to shave your legs and underarms. I've got everything you need. We should also try and do your nails before you get dressed, if we've got time. I guess I hadn't really thought this all through. I hadn't even considered shaving my legs. But, just the thought was appealing. Mom herded me up to my bathroom as soon as I finished eating. You start the bath and I'll get the toiletries, she said. Bath? I asked. Can't I just take a shower? And miss out on one of the great pleasures of being a girl, said Mom. Not on your life. So, I started filling the tub and Mom came back with an armload of bottles and sponges and God only knows what. She poured a few capfuls of bath oil in the tub and the room instantly filled with a flowery aroma. She explained how I was to use each product and then handed me one of those pink disposable razors. As I stepped into the bath, I realized Mom was right. This was heavenly. The warm water and the aroma of the bath oil worked its magic on me. I could have stayed there for days but remembered there was more excitement ahead. I used the razor as Mom had directed and was soon rewarded with a clean, smooth body. I followed her directions with the shampoo and conditioner also. When I stepped out of the tub, I used the lotion she'd left me. I was simply astounded at how soft and smooth my skin felt. I wrapped a towel around my waist and started to brush out my hair. Looking at myself in the mirror, I noticed something not quite right. I grabbed one of the larger towels and swapped it with the one around my waist. This one I wrapped around my chest like I had seen the girls on TV do. Now I thought I looked right. Mom knocked and asked, "Are you decent?" I let her in. She noticed the towel and just smiled her approval. She handed me a pair of her panties and said, "These will have to do for now." I thought they weren't much different from what Carol had given me and slipped them on under the towel. Okay. Let's get started on your hair. I followed her into her bedroom and sat at her vanity as indicated. I usually just let my hair air dry, so blow drying was kind of new to me. Mom worked the warm air through my hair with first her fingers and then the brush. When she was finished, I felt like I had twice as much hair on my head and couldn't believe how soft and silky it felt. Instead of pulling it back, she just brushed a little behind my ears, leaving it hanging in front of my shoulders. Once again, I marveled at how just a few minor changes made me look so feminine. I think we've got time to do your nails before Carol gets here, she said. We may have to wait on your toes though. She opened one of the drawers on the vanity and selected her tools. My nails, obviously, weren't long but weren't all chipped and bitten down like some guys. She filed them a little to shape them, then buffed each one. Slowly and with expert strokes, she coated each nail with a pearlescent pink. Now, keep your fingers apart and away from everything until the polish dries. This will take a few minutes even though it's fast drying. I did as directed and kept my hands out in front of me, thinking they looked very pretty. While we're waiting, let's talk about what it means to be ladylike. You need to focus on what you're doing all the time. When you wear a skirt or a dress, you need to be conscious of where it is and what may happen. Like smoothing your skirt under you when you sit, for example. It's not just to prevent wrinkles. It's also to keep it down so you don't give everyone a peek at your undies. The same is true of some blouses or tops. It's important to understand how the fabric may move so you don't expose too much. Girls your age are just starting to flaunt their femininity, and sometimes they go too far. They tend to leave nothing to the imagination, which is a very powerful tool where boys are concerned. I was about to say something about being a boy when the doorbell rang. "That must be Carol," I said. "She's earlier than I thought she'd be." "You stay here and don't touch anything," Mom said. "I'll bring her up." I sat there wondering how you could tell if your nail polish was dry when I heard this thumping and banging coming up the steps. "You just gonna sit there, or could you maybe give me a hand or something?" Carol grunted as she walked into the room with a suitcase roughly the size of a steamer trunk. "I can't. My nails aren't dry," I said, thinking that sounded ridiculous coming from my mouth. "Oh my God. You're gonna be one of those girls. I can't do anything 'cause I might break a nail." "Give me a break." "Easy, Carol," said Mom. She was carrying another suitcase almost as big as the one Carol had brought in. "She's only doing what I told her to do." "What all did you bring?" "We only need a couple of outfits." "See, that's what I told my mother." But she got all wound up and said we needed options, and the next thing I know, she's throwing things in the suitcase. She also said something about the apple not falling far from the tree, whatever that means. Mom and I just looked at each other, knowing exactly what Carol's mother was referring to. "By the way," Carol said, "she wants to see you." Carol kind of looked away when I whipped my head back around. "What do you mean?" I demanded. "Well, she didn't get to see you yesterday. And when I told her about your experiment, she said she wanted to meet Rachel." "I'm sorry." "There was nothing I could do," she pleaded. I cringed at the thought of parading around in front of somebody else. "Well," said Mom, "we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. First, we need to get you dressed. Let's see what we've got to work with." The next 15 or 20 minutes were spent with Carol and Mom going through the contents of the suitcases. Occasionally, they'd turn and look at me or hold something up in front of me. For the most part, they just ignored me. I was beginning to feel like a life-size Barbie doll. I had finally had enough. "Hello. You who? Anybody remember me? I'm the one sitting here in a towel. Can I please have something to put on?" "Oops. Sorry, sweetie," said Mom. It finally dawned on Carol just what was happening here. She started grinning from ear to ear. "I really can't believe you're doing this. You know, this isn't what they mean by getting into a girl's panties." "Carol. Gee, you're a real laugh riot." "Har har har," I said with as much sarcasm as I could muster. "Stop it, you two," Mom said. "Carol, get Rachel a bra while I check her nails." Mom looked at my hands and had me touch two of my nails together. "Any stickiness?" When I shook my head no, she said, "Good." Carol handed me a bra similar to the one I'd worn yesterday, only this one had padded cups. She explained how to wrap it around my waist, hook it, then bring the straps over my shoulders. Once I had the foam inserts in, my bust looked even larger than the day before. Snap! Ouch!